guys, welcome back to our channel. So today I'm going to be showing you how to create this lily pad granny square. This design is by Elaine Alcocer. She has a website called Pasta and Patchwork, and actually I think she's moved to another website, but I'll link the pattern down below. So the pattern, the written instructions, and the diagram are in her website. So I'm just going to do a video tutorial on how to do it, okay? Now, this way to do it is a little bit different than her instructions, simply because we are going to do a no sewing, no weaving ends, and the way we're going to attach our yarn for our color changes is going to be different from hers, okay? So as you see here, there's only 2 ends to weave. So for her pattern, Elaine used cotton fingering yarn, and she used a 3.5mm E4 hook, and her granny square came out to approximately 5x5. Now I'm using a size 4 medium yarn, and I'm using a size 5.5 hook, and my square came out to be roughly 6 inches and 3/4. All right, so we're gonna start off with a magic circle. This is just the way I'm doing my circle. It's the same way I do a slip knot, except instead of pulling it out, I simply twist and bring the working yarn like so. It's harder than it should have been. Okay, so now you have a chain 1. Now we're gonna do another chain. Now we should have here 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and this is going to count as our first double crochet. So we're going to do a total of 8 double crochets. So if that one counts, then we're going to insert 7. This is number 8. Okay, so now that we're at the end, we're simply going to pull, and we're going to slip stitch. You see this 1, 2, 3 on the 3rd chain. Now to go to the next round, you would simply pull this yarn, and it would create a loop, right, to start the next round. We're going to do a color change here. We know that our color change needs to happen somewhere around here, because the yarn that is incoming and forming the loop for the next round needs to be a different color. At this point, we're going to cut a tail, and we're going to start going in with the new color. So we're going to use the magic knot to tie this together, okay? I don't suggest taking out the hook and replacing it with a stitch marker for this step, because the stitch marker is thinner than the hook, and it will impact where you're going to end up with your knot. So just leave it like this, and now this is what we're going to do. We're going to tie the old tail, the old color, into the new color, okay? So it's simply, and so you're simply tying it around like this. I know it's a little hard to see, but I'm going to try my best to work it in a way that you're able to sort of tell what I'm doing. You see this, it's not tight right now, okay? So it's not tight. So this knot, I'm going to try to get it as close as I can to this edge, or to this side, okay? So without tightening it, you kind of just jimmy it up down this way. Whoops. Okay, so you see how the knot is as close as possible to your piece. Now that will allow it for the knot to stay here and the color change to happen here. Wherever you tie this first knot is wherever your color change is going to stay, okay? That's where it's going to happen. Okay, now for your next step, you're going to tie your new yarn around your old yarn. Around right here. Right here. And then this knot doesn't really matter because it just doesn't really matter. This knot doesn't really matter because it's going to be pulled to the bottom. So now you're going to pull your working yarn, which is the new color, and the tail of the old color, and you're just simply going to pull. You see how it went inside? Now you just make it tight. Oops. Pulling out the tail. And you just try to tighten it around. And now, be careful with this tail. You do not want to cut this tail. That's the magic circle tail. Now, you're going to have these two tails right here, and that is what you're going to be cutting off. Okay? And when you cut off, make sure you cut close enough to the knot, but not too close to where you're cutting into the knot. Okay? So now you're going to go back in here. You're going to grab your yarn, as you would, and you're going to pull through. Loop it right through. Okay, so now you have your color change. The knot is going to stay in the back, and it will eventually, as you work your rounds, as you work your way, you're going to have places to hide it in, okay? And it'll be fine. So now you're going to chain 3, and you're going to start working on your puff stitches, okay? So the first puff stitch, the big part of the bulk is going to be this chain. So you don't have to really go and do so many ins and outs, and I'll explain to you in a bit. All right, so you're gonna, to do a puff stitch, you're gonna yarn over, and you're gonna stick your yarn into the stitch where this chain is coming from, okay? So you're gonna stick it in here, oops, right here. Yarn over and pull through. You have 3 loops, right? You have 3 loops right here. So you're gonna yarn over and go into that same stitch right here. Go into it, yarn over, and then pull through. And now you're gonna have 5 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yarn over and close the puff stitch, okay? Pull through, and now you close the puff stitch, my bad. And now you're gonna chain 1. After you close the puff stitch, you chain 1. So now you see the chain 3 right here makes a bulk. So you don't have to go in and out of the stitch to create so many, to give it any more puffiness. So now you're going to do the same thing, yarn over, go into your next stitch, okay? So this is going to be your next stitch. Exactly where I'm putting my hook is on top of the double crochet, not in between the double crochet, okay? On top, right? So we're going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, put the hook, pull through, yarn over, put the hook, yarn over, and bring it out. So now you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops. Now you're gonna yarn over and pull it through all 7 loops, and you're gonna close your puff stitch, and you're gonna chain 1. And you're gonna repeat the process, and you should have 8 puff stitches at the very end. So one more time, yarn over, into your next stitch, go into your next stitch, yarn over, and pull through, yarn over, go into that same stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, go into that same stitch, yarn over and pull it out. And then you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yarn over and pull through all 7 loops, right? And now you close your puff stitch, and then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to repeat it, okay? So I'll see you at the end. All right, so I'm at the end. I'm working on my last puff stitch. I'm going to close it up, and I'm going to chain 1. And now I'm going to go and find that very third chain, 1, 2, 3, and that's where I'm going to be slip stitching on the third chain. So I'm going to do another color change. So I'm going to cut my yarn. We're going to tie the old yarn into the new one. This is just what I'm doing, okay? Now I don't want to tighten it just yet. because I want to work the knot all the way to the very, very, very bottom. Or as close as I can, because that's where my color change is going to occur. So that's where I want it to be. You see, it's now tied up in there. And now I'm going to tie the new yarn onto the old one, just like this. Whoops. And remember, we're pulling the tail of the old yarn with the new working yarn, okay? Now you simply cut the tails. Now we pick up our work, our new working yarn, and we're going to slip stitch. So for this next part, we're going to be working in the chain spaces. So meaning we're going to be putting our hook in here, okay? This is where we're going to be working in between the puff stitches. We're going to chain 4, and this is why. The first 3 chains are going to act as our first double crochet, and then the chain 1 is going to go in between each of the clusters. So this is going to be the first double crochet of this chain space. So we're going to start here. Okay? It'll make sense in the end. Okay, so we're going to yarn over. Just remember to have 4 chains. And then we're going to insert, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets, okay, in these chain spaces right here. Right? So our 3 double crochets are done. Now we're going to chain 1. And that's what this 4th chain is, our chain 1, okay? It's going to act as the double crochet in the chain 1. So now we're going to go into the next chain space, and we're going to do 3 double crochets. Now we're at the end. This is our last chain space. And remember, we have a double crochet worked into here. So we're simply going to work 2 double crochets in the very last chain space. And we are going to slip stitch on our 3rd chain. So it's 1, 2, 3. Right here. Right here. So we're going to do another color change. So it's the same process. You tie your old yarn to your new yarn. Okay, so we're going to work it all the way to the bottom. And it's a little bit difficult, but if you've seen or you know how to do the magic knot, it's just really that. It's a knot. You're really not missing out. Now that you've tied your old yarn to your new yarn, you tie your new yarn to your old yarn. So it's the same process. Go around, go under. Okay, and now make sure it's tight. Make sure everything is tight. And then you pull the tail of the old color and your new working yarn. And now you're going to simply cut the tails off. Now we're going to continue our work and finish our slip stitch. So now we're going to chain 3. And we're going to do the same thing, working in between the clusters, in between the spaces. These are clusters of 5 without any chains in between. So we're going to do just 5 double crochets here, 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 all around, and you should end up with 8 clusters of 5 double crochets. So this is going to be our first double crochet into this chain space. So since that counts as 1, you only need to add 4 double crochets. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you have 5 double crochets. That chain 3 acts as the first one. And now you're going to yarn over and go straight into this other chain space and another cluster of 5 double crochets. All right, so we're at the end and we're going to slip stitch on the 3rd chain. This is 1, 2, 3 right here. And here comes, you guessed it, another color change. Now I slip stitch, you chain 2, go into this chain space right here, yarn over, pull through. You have 2 loops, right? Yarn over and pull through. That's your first single crochet. Now we're going to start to square this off. So then you're going to chain 2, and into this chain space right here, we're going to do the corner, our very first corner. So we're going to yarn over and go in here, and we're going to do 3 double crochets. And then you're going to chain 3. And then go back into that same chain space and do 3 double crochets again. And that's how you're going to be working your corners. Okay, and now you're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And into this chain space, you're going to work 3 single crochets. You're going to chain 2. And you're going to work your other corner in this chain space. And now we're in the beginning. So now we're going to insert 2 single crochets here. 1, slip stitch. We're not doing a color change. For this next part, we will be working into the chain spaces that we created. So all of these. We're going to have to move this slip stitch over to this side. We're going to insert our hook into this chain space, yarn over, and we're going to insert this loop into the previous slip stitch, right, like that. And so now you see our slip stitch, instead of being on top of this single crochet, is over here on top of this chain space. So now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to add 2 double crochets into this space. So now we're going to chain 1, chain space in the corner. We're going to work the same way we did on the previous round. 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. Coming out of the corner, we're not going to chain 1. We're going to go straight into this chain space right here. And we're going to add 3 double crochets. So now we're here and we're going to chain 1. And we're going to go into this chain space right here. All right, so we're here and we're going to chain 1. Now we're going to repeat this pattern all around. I just did the last cluster of 3 double crochets and a chain 1. So now I'm going to slip stitch into 1, 2, 3, the 3rd chain from my first cluster. Whoops. All right, there we go. Is it? Yeah, okay. And this is going to be my last color change. So now I'm going to cut the tail and I'm going to go in with my new color. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. Tie the old yarn. Remember, try to get the knot as close as possible. Oh, this is pretty darn good. Look at that. And now you're going to tie your new yarn to the old one. Cut your tails. All right, so now we slip stitch. And then we're going to chain 2. And we're going to work our way down the whole square with half double crochets, and we're gonna insert into the chain spaces and into the stitches up here and up here and into the chain spaces. This chain 2 will act as the first half double crochet stitch. So now we're gonna go into this stitch right here. Okay, and we're gonna work a half double crochet. And then we're gonna go into this stitch right here, into the stitch right there. And we're gonna work another half double crochet. So now you're supposed to have 3 on top of the 3 double crochets of the last row. Now we're gonna get to the chain spaces. In between these chain spaces, you're gonna add 2 half double crochet. So now we're back to the cluster from the previous round, and we're gonna add a half double crochet on top of each of these double crochet stitches. So now we're at the corner, and we're gonna work it the same way, meaning in clusters of 3. 3 half double crochets, 3 chains, 3 half double crochets. So we're gonna start here. Chain 3 and half, because you get so used to working double crochets throughout the whole project, and then we're doing halves. Okay, so now we're at the top of this cluster, and we're gonna do the same thing. Into the stitches, half double crochet, into the stitch. And when I mean into the stitch, it's like in this actual space right here. And you're gonna work your way around the square in the same manner. Every chain space, you do 2 half double crochets. Every corner, 3 half double crochets, chain 3, 3 half double crochets, and I'll meet you over here at the end. As I'm working my way around the square, I realize that I'm missing a double crochet here. So this is very important. You can miss double crochets here, doesn't matter, because you're working into the chain spaces. So even if you miss one here and you put 4 double crochets, or you do 2 double crochets, it's not as big of a deal as missing them up here and here. You don't want to miss a stitch here, because this is where your pattern starts. You depend on 8 double crochets, 8 puffs, 8 clusters, right? And your whole pattern depends on it. Now over here is very important, because as I'm closing off and just framing off my square, that's where I'm going to be joining them together. So if I'm missing a stitch, it's going to definitely impact. Now I have one or two things that I could do. An extra half double here on this stitch, or an extra here. You can't really tell. So I'll have my cluster of 2, and then I'll have 3 half double crochets here. So there's nothing that can't be solved. Yeah, it looks a little, I know, I can tell I'm missing a half double crochet. In the grand scheme of things, this is going to be my item. I'm not going to be gifting it. It's going to be fine. I really don't want to go ahead and frog it, especially because it's okay. It doesn't affect the overall look, the overall functionality of this granny square. It's still a very pretty granny square. When the mistakes are very small compared to the overall piece, I usually don't really go back and frog it. Okay, so now we're at the very end, and we are going to slip stitch onto that second chain. And don't worry, we're done with the color changes. This is it. We just framed our granny square. This is how it turns out. Just like this, right? You really can't tell the knots. I can point them out to you. This is one's right here. There's a knot right here. There's a knot right, oh no, that's not a knot, it's just a color change. Yeah, most of the knots ended up in the back. And I can point them out to you. They're right here, right here, right here. This one's already been blocked. This one is just freshly made. So it does, I think it does make a difference if you start, you know, messing with it, making it to where it's hidden. Just kind of play with it, you know, it'll sort itself out, I guess.
I think I was missing out using the magic knot technique for color work. I'm overall happy with the way the granny squares turned out. Now that my blanket is done, it has gone through 2 washes and it gets daily use. And so I mean I'm happy with it. Nothing has come undone. I really can't tell the knots because they have worked their way into the actual granny square, and overall it's a gorgeous blanket. It's a gorgeous piece. It serves its main purpose, which is keeping me warm. And it really did cut down significantly on the weaving in the ants part. I cannot stress that enough. I know a lot of you guys hate, despise, and will shy away from doing color work because of that reason. I think this magic knot technique really works out fine. And the way to incorporate it into this blanket, I think it's phenomenal. Like I said, I finished my blanket. If you want to see how I ended up joining my granny squares, stay tuned for the next video. Bye.